Maria Williams had worked at Romano's Italian restaurant for 3 years, but she remained invisible to most customers. At 24, she moved through the dining room like a shadow, taking orders with quiet efficiency and speaking only when necessary. Her co-workers often joked that she was too serious, too reserved for the restaurant business. But Maria had her reasons for keeping to herself. The restaurant sat in the heart of Little Italy, where old traditions ran deep and family names carried weight. Maria knew the stories whispered in the kitchen about certain customers who received special treatment, about tables that were always kept reserved, and about the man who owned half the neighborhood. But she kept her head down and did her job, grateful for steady work that helped her support her younger brother's college tuition. On this particular Tuesday evening in October, the autumn rain drummed against the restaurant's windows as Maria wiped down tables in her section. The dinner rush had ended, leaving only a handful of customers scattered throughout the dimly lit dining room. She moved methodically, her black uniform crisp despite the long shift, her movements practiced and efficient. That's when she noticed the elderly woman sitting alone at table 12. The woman appeared to be in her 70s, with silver hair perfectly styled and wearing an expensive black dress that spoke of old money. But something about her seemed off. She sat stiffly in her chair, her hands trembling slightly as she attempted to read the menu. Her breathing appeared labored, and beads of perspiration dotted her forehead despite the restaurant's cool temperature. Maria had been trained to notice when customers needed assistance, but this felt different. The woman's distress seemed to go beyond simple confusion over menu choices. Maria glanced around the dining room, noting that Tony, the regular waiter for that section, was nowhere to be seen. The other staff members were busy with their own tables or cleaning duties in the back. The woman dropped her menu, and Maria watched as she pressed her hand to her chest, her face pale and drawn. Years of caring for her grandmother had taught Maria to recognize the signs of someone in medical distress. Without hesitation, she approached the table, her usual shyness forgotten in the face of obvious need. "Excuse me, ma'am," Maria said softly, her voice gentle but concerned. "Are you feeling all right? Can I get you some water or call someone for you?" The elderly woman looked up, surprise flickering across her features at being addressed with such genuine care. Most people, she was used to receiving attention because of who she was, not because someone simply noticed she needed help. Her eyes, sharp despite her physical discomfort, studied Maria's face with interest. I think I might need to sit down somewhere quieter," the woman managed to say, her voice carrying a slight accent that spoke of old-world elegance. "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed." Maria didn't hesitate. She gently helped the woman to her feet, noting how frail she felt despite her dignified appearance. "There's a small private dining room in the back that's not being used tonight. Would you like me to help you there? It's much quieter, and you can rest for a moment." As they walked slowly toward the back of the restaurant, Maria kept a steady hand on the woman's arm, matching her pace and speaking in soothing tones. "My name is Maria. I'm going to take good care of you, okay? Do you have any medications with you? Should I call a doctor?" The woman shook her head slightly. "Just need to rest for a moment. Been a very long day." She paused, studying Maria's profile as they walked. "You're very kind, dear. Most people wouldn't notice an old woman having trouble." Maria settled the woman into a comfortable chair in the private room and brought her a glass of cool water and some crackers. She pulled up another chair and sat at a respectful distance, ready to help but not wanting to hover. "Is there someone I should call for you? A family member, perhaps?" "My son will be here soon," the woman replied, taking small sips of water. "He always comes to check on me after his business meetings." She smiled slightly. "He worries too much, that boy, even though he's nearly 50 himself." As they sat in comfortable silence, Maria noticed details about the woman that spoke of a life well lived, but perhaps lonely. Her jewelry was expensive but understated, her clothes clearly custom-made, yet there was something wistful in her eyes. Maria had always been good at reading people, a skill developed from years of observing rather than participating. "You work here long?" the woman asked, her breathing having returned to normal. 3 years, Maria replied. "It's a good job. The family who owns this place treats their employees well." She didn't mention the rumors about the restaurant's connections or the special customers who received particular attention. Those were not her stories to tell. The woman nodded approvingly. "Good honest work is important. I raised my son to understand that. She paused, her eyes growing distant. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers those lessons. Maria sensed layers of meaning in the woman's words but didn't pry. Instead, she simply sat with her, offering the gift of quiet companionship. In her experience, sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was just be present, without judgment or expectation. The sound of raised voices from the main dining room broke their peaceful moment. Maria could hear Tony speaking in urgent, worried tones, and she realized he had probably returned to find his important customer missing from table 12. She started to rise, intending to let him know where they were, but the elderly woman gently touched her arm. "Wait," she said quietly. "Before the chaos starts again, I want to thank you. You treated me like a person, not like what most people see when they look at me." Her eyes were warm with genuine gratitude. "That's rarer than you might think." Maria felt touched by the woman's words but remained humble. Anyone would have done the same thing. The woman smiled knowingly. "No, dear. They really wouldn't have." The sound of footsteps approaching in the hallway grew louder. "I think my son has arrived." The footsteps in the hallway grew closer, accompanied by multiple voices speaking in hushed but urgent tones. Maria could distinguish Tony's nervous explanations mixed with deeper, more authoritative voices that carried an edge of concern and barely controlled anger. The elderly woman straightened in her chair, her demeanor shifting subtly from that of a vulnerable grandmother to someone accustomed to command and respect. "Mrs. Romano, we've been looking everywhere for you," came Tony's voice as he appeared in the doorway, followed by 3 men in expensive suits. The man in front was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying temples and dark eyes that immediately scanned the room, assessing every detail. His presence filled the space with an unmistakable authority that made Maria instinctively step back. "Vincent, darling," the elderly woman said calmly, rising from her chair with renewed strength. "I'm perfectly fine. This lovely young lady has been taking excellent care of me." Vincent Romano's eyes shifted to Maria, and she felt the weight of his scrutiny. She had heard his name whispered in the kitchen, seen the way staff members tensed when he arrived for his weekly dinners with his mother, and understood without being told that he was someone who commanded both respect and fear in this neighborhood. But now, standing in this small room, she was simply a waitress who had helped his mother, and she met his gaze steadily. "What happened?" Vincent asked, his voice controlled but carrying an undertone that suggested someone would be held accountable if his mother had been in any danger. Maria spoke before the elderly woman could answer. "Your mother was feeling unwell at her table. She needed somewhere quiet to rest, so I brought her here and made sure she was comfortable. She's been much better after having some water and a few minutes to relax." Vincent studied Maria more carefully, noting her calm demeanor and the genuine concern in her voice. Most people became nervous or overly eager to please when they met him, but this young woman seemed focused entirely on his mother's well-being rather than his identity or reputation. "You did this on your own?" he asked. "You didn't alert the manager or call for assistance?" "She needed help immediately," Maria replied simply. "I didn't think about protocol. I just wanted to make sure she was safe and comfortable." Mrs. Romano moved closer to her son, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Vincent, this young lady showed me more genuine kindness in 10 minutes than I usually receive in a month. She didn't know who I was, didn't ask for anything, just saw someone who needed help and provided it." Tony shifted nervously in the background, clearly worried about the implications of a staff member taking such initiative with Vincent Romano's mother without following proper procedures. The other 2 men remained silent but alert, their eyes moving between Maria and the exits in the practiced way of people accustomed to potential threats. Vincent's expression softened slightly as he looked at his mother, noting the color that had returned to her cheeks and the calmness in her demeanor. "Maria, is it?" he asked, having caught her name from their conversation. "Yes, sir," Maria replied, not intimidated but respectful. "My mother is very important to me," Vincent continued, his voice carrying layers of meaning. "When someone takes care of her the way you did tonight, that means something. That's not forgotten." Maria nodded but didn't elaborate or try to capitalize on the moment. She simply gathered the water glass and crackers, preparing to clean up and return to her regular duties. This reaction seemed to surprise Vincent, who was accustomed to people immediately trying to leverage any connection to him for personal gain. "Where are you from, Maria?" Mrs. Romano asked, settling back into her chair as if she intended to continue their conversation despite the arrival of her entourage. "Born and raised in Brooklyn," Maria answered. "Moved here 3 years ago when I got this job. Family," Mrs. Romano continued, ignoring her son's subtle signals that they should be leaving. "A younger brother. He's in college studying engineering. Very smart kid." Maria's face lit up slightly when she mentioned her brother, the first truly personal emotion she had shown since Vincent's arrival. Vincent filed away this information, noting the pride in Maria's voice and the way her entire demeanor changed when discussing her brother. He had built his reputation on understanding what motivated people, and it was clear that family was Maria's driving force. "Mrs. Romano," Tony interrupted carefully, "your usual table is ready if you'd like to have dinner now. The kitchen has prepared your favorite dishes." "Actually," Mrs. Romano said, looking directly at Maria, "I'd prefer if this young lady could serve us tonight. She's already taken such good care of me, and I'd like to continue our conversation." Tony's face went pale. Maria wasn't assigned to the VIP section, didn't have experience with the restaurant's most important customers, and this request was completely outside normal protocol. But Vincent Romano nodded slowly, studying Maria's reaction to his mother's request. "Would that be acceptable to you?" Vincent asked Maria directly. "My mother doesn't usually make such requests, so when she does, we tend to honor them." Maria felt the weight of multiple gazes upon her. She understood that this was about more than serving dinner, that accepting would somehow change her position in the restaurant's complex social hierarchy. But looking at Mrs. Romano's hopeful expression, she found herself nodding. "I'd be honored to serve you," Maria said quietly, "but I should mention that I've never worked the VIP section before." "I don't want to disappoint you," Mrs. Romano smiled warmly. "Dear, you've already exceeded my expectations. Just be yourself." As they prepared to move back to the main dining room, Vincent hung back for a moment, studying Maria with the calculating gaze of someone who had built an empire on accurately assessing character. Most people who encountered his family either cowered in fear or immediately began scheming for advantage. Maria had done neither, and that intrigued him. "One more thing," he said quietly as the others moved ahead. "You said you helped my mother because she needed help, not because you knew who she was. But now you know. Does that change anything?" Maria met his eyes directly. "Should it? She's still the same person who needed help, and I'm still the same person who was glad to provide it." Vincent Romano smiled for the first time that evening, a genuine expression that transformed his stern features. This young waitress had just passed a test she didn't even know she was taking. The main dining room felt different as Maria led the Romano family to their preferred table in the corner, the one that offered clear views of all entrances and provided privacy for conversation. Other diners glanced up as Vincent and his mother passed, some with recognition, others with the instinctive awareness that they were in the presence of power. Maria noticed how the atmosphere shifted, conversations becoming more subdued, staff members moving with extra precision. Tony had quickly briefed Maria on the family's preferences. Mrs. Romano liked her wine served at exactly room temperature, preferred her bread warm, and enjoyed taking her time with meals. Vincent typically ordered for both of them and expected prompt but unobtrusive service. Most importantly, Tony had stressed, they valued discretion and privacy above all else. As Maria helped Mrs. Romano settle into her chair, she noticed the older woman's slight smile of satisfaction. It was clear that she had orchestrated this entire arrangement, though her motivations remained mysterious. Vincent positioned himself where he could watch the room while still giving his full attention to his mother, a habit that spoke of years spent balancing family devotion with necessary caution. "Tell me about this brother of yours," Mrs. Romano said once Maria had provided menus and taken their drink orders. "Engineering, you said? That's impressive." Maria felt Vincent's attention sharpen, though he appeared to be studying the wine list. She sensed that everything said at this table would be remembered and evaluated. "Marcus is 21, going to community college first to save money, then transferring to a 4-year program. He's always been good with his hands, loves figuring out how things work." "Smart approach," Vincent commented, looking up from his menu. "Too many kids accumulate massive debt for degrees they don't need. Building a foundation first shows good judgment." "That's what our grandmother always taught us," Maria replied. "She raised us after our parents died in a car accident when I was 16. She worked 3 jobs to keep us together and in school. Everything I know about taking care of people, I learned from watching her. Mrs. Romano's expression softened with understanding. Losing parents so young must have been devastating. But it sounds like your grandmother gave you something precious, the knowledge that family comes first no matter what. She did, Maria agreed, her voice carrying deep affection. She passed away 2 years ago, right before Marcus started college. I promised her I'd make sure he finished his education no matter what it took. Vincent exchanged a meaningful glance with his mother. In their world, loyalty to family was the highest virtue, and they had just heard Maria articulate the same values that guided their own lives. Her willingness to sacrifice for her brother's future, to work multiple jobs if necessary, resonated with both of them in ways she couldn't fully understand. "What about you?" Mrs. Romano asked gently. "What are your dreams beyond supporting your brother?" Maria paused while pouring water, considering the question. Few people had ever asked her about her own aspirations. "I'd like to open a small restaurant someday. Nothing fancy, just a place where people feel welcome and well-fed. Maybe hire other young people who need steady work while they're figuring out their futures." "The restaurant business is challenging," Vincent observed, though not discouraging. "What makes you think you could succeed where others fail?" "I've watched this place operate for 3 years," Maria replied thoughtfully. "I see what works and what doesn't. Good food is important, but making people feel valued is what brings them back. And I've learned that treating your employees well means they take better care of your customers." Mrs. Romano smiled approvingly. "Wise observations. Vincent, doesn't she remind you of someone?" Vincent studied Maria more intently, seeing past her quiet demeanor to the strength and determination underneath. "She does, actually. She reminds me of you, Ma, when you were building our first restaurant with Papa." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Mrs. Romano said, her eyes twinkling with something that might have been mischief. The same practical wisdom, the same focus on treating people right. Maria felt increasingly out of her depth but remained professional, taking their dinner orders and ensuring their needs were met. As the evening progressed, she found herself drawn into their conversation despite her usual reserve. Mrs. Romano had a gift for making people feel heard, asking thoughtful questions and listening intently to the answers. The other diners in the restaurant began to take notice of the unusual attention the Romano family was paying to their waitress. Some recognized the significance. Vincent Romano's approval could change someone's life in this neighborhood. Others simply observed that the most powerful man in Little Italy was treating a young black waitress with unusual respect and interest. Maria remained unaware of the speculation surrounding their table, focused entirely on providing excellent service while enjoying the rare experience of being truly seen and appreciated for who she was rather than just her function as a server. During a quiet moment between courses, Mrs. Romano leaned forward slightly. "Maria, I want to tell you something. In my 76 years, I've met thousands of people. Most want something from our family, even if they don't say so directly. But tonight you helped me simply because I needed help. You're continuing to serve us with the same kindness you showed when you thought I was just another customer." "Because that's what you are," Maria replied without thinking, then caught herself. "I mean, everyone deserves to be treated well regardless of who they are." Vincent laughed, a rich sound that drew glances from across the room. "Ma, I think you found someone who isn't impressed by the Romano name." "On the contrary," Mrs. Romano corrected, "I think she understands exactly what our name should represent. Taking care of people, building community, honoring family. She just doesn't let it intimidate her." As the evening continued, Maria began to understand that she was participating in something more significant than a dinner service. The Romano family was evaluating her, but not in a way that felt threatening or transactional. Instead, it felt like the beginning of a relationship built on mutual respect and shared values. When Vincent excused himself to take a phone call, Mrs. Romano seized the opportunity for private conversation. "My dear," she said quietly, "I want you to know that what happened tonight wasn't random. I've been watching this restaurant for months, noting how different staff members treat various customers. You're the only one who consistently shows the same kindness to everyone, regardless of their appearance or apparent importance." Maria felt a flutter of uncertainty. "Mrs. Romano, I'm not sure what you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything yet," the older woman replied with a mysterious smile. "But I am observing everything. and so far I'm very impressed with what I see. Over the following weeks, Maria's life at Romano's restaurant began to change in subtle but significant ways. The Romano family returned every Tuesday evening, always requesting Maria as their server. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood that Vincent Romano's mother had taken a special interest in one of the waitresses, and the implications rippled through the restaurant's social dynamics. Some of Maria's co-workers viewed her new status with envy, whispering that she was trying to climb above her station or curry favor with the wrong people. Others, particularly the older staff members who understood the family's history in the neighborhood, treated her with newfound respect. Maria found herself navigating these shifting relationships with the same quiet dignity she had always maintained. Tony, the head waiter, initially worried that Maria's unconventional rise to serving the VIP table might disrupt the restaurant's carefully maintained protocols. However, he quickly noticed that the Romano family seemed more relaxed and talkative than he had ever seen them. Mrs. Romano would spend entire evenings in animated conversation with Maria, discussing everything from cooking techniques to neighborhood history. "She's got a gift," Tony confided to the restaurant manager after observing several of these interactions. "Mrs. Romano has never opened up to anyone the way she talks to Maria, and Mr. Romano actually smiles when he's here now." The manager, a nervous man who had always been terrified of making any mistake that might displease Vincent Romano, began to see Maria as an asset rather than a risk. Her presence seemed to bring out a more human side of their most important customers, which could only be good for business. Maria, meanwhile, found herself genuinely looking forward to Tuesday evenings. Mrs. Romano had become more than a customer. She was becoming a mentor and friend. The older woman shared stories of immigrating from Sicily as a young bride, of working alongside her husband to build their first restaurant, of raising Vincent during the difficult early years when the family was establishing itself in America. "You remind me so much of myself at your age," Mrs. Romano told Maria one evening as they discussed the challenges of balancing work and family obligations. "I had the same determination, the same focus on taking care of the people I loved. It's rare to see that quality in young people today." Vincent, who usually remained more reserved, began to participate in these conversations as well. Maria discovered that beneath his intimidating exterior was a man who genuinely cared about his community and took pride in the legitimate businesses his family operated. He spoke passionately about the restaurant's role in preserving Italian-American traditions and providing jobs for neighborhood families. Too many young people today think success means leaving their communities behind, he told Maria during one of their discussions. But real success means lifting your community up with you, creating opportunities for the next generation. These words resonated deeply with Maria, who had always felt torn between her dreams and her loyalty to the neighborhood that had given her a chance. She began to see that it might be possible to achieve her goals while still honoring her roots and responsibilities. One Tuesday evening in November, Mrs. Romano arrived at the restaurant looking more frail than usual. Maria noticed immediately that the older woman was moving more slowly and seemed to be in some discomfort. When Vincent stepped away to handle a phone call, Maria gently asked if everything was all right. "I've been to see the doctor," Mrs. Romano admitted quietly. "My heart isn't as strong as it used to be. Vincent doesn't know yet, he worries too much already, and he has so many other responsibilities." Maria felt a surge of concern for the woman who had become so important to her. "Is there anything I can do to help? Anything that would make you more comfortable?" Mrs. Romano reached across the table and squeezed Maria's hand. "You're already doing it, dear. These Tuesday evenings have become the highlight of my week. Knowing that there are still young people like you in the world gives me hope for the future." That night, as Maria was closing her section, Vincent approached her with an unusual request. "My mother has grown very fond of you," he said directly. "I want to ask if you would consider spending some time with her outside of the restaurant. Not as an employee, but as a friend. She's been lonely since my father passed away, and I think your company brings her joy." Maria was touched by the request and honored by the trust it implied. "I'd be happy to spend time with her. She's become very special to me, too. There would be compensation, of course," Vincent continued. "I know you work hard to support your brother's education. This would be in addition to your restaurant wages." Maria hesitated, not wanting their friendship to become a business transaction. I don't need payment to spend time with your mother, Mr. Romano. I genuinely enjoy her company. Vincent studied her carefully, once again impressed by her integrity. That's exactly why I want you in her life. But I also know you have financial obligations. Think of it as a family arrangement. We take care of the people who take care of us. Over the next few weeks, Maria began visiting Mrs. Romano at her apartment on Sunday afternoons. The older woman lived in a beautiful but lonely space filled with photographs and memories of a life well lived. They would cook together, with Mrs. Romano teaching Maria traditional Sicilian recipes while sharing stories of the old country and the early days of the family's life in America. You have gentle hands, Mrs. Romano observed as Maria kneaded pasta dough under her guidance. That's important in cooking, but it's more important in life. People respond to gentleness even when they pretend they don't. These Sunday visits became precious to both women. For Mrs. Romano, they provided companionship and the joy of passing on her knowledge to someone who truly appreciated it. For Maria, they offered a connection to traditions and wisdom that her own grandmother's death had left incomplete. Vincent would sometimes join them for these Sunday meals, and Maria began to see another side of the man whose reputation preceded him throughout Little Italy. With his mother, he was simply a devoted son who brought flowers every week and listened patiently to the same stories told over and over again. Family is everything, he told Maria one Sunday as they cleared dishes together. Everything else, business, money, reputation, those are just tools to protect and provide for the people you love. Never forget that. Maria found herself thinking about these words often, understanding that she was being given insights into a world that few outsiders ever glimpsed. The Romano family's loyalty to each other and their community was absolute, and she was beginning to understand that she was somehow becoming part of that extended family. December brought the first serious test of the relationship Maria had built with the Romano family. Mrs. Romano's health took a sudden turn for the worse, and she was hospitalized with heart complications. Vincent called Maria personally to inform her, his voice tight with worry and exhaustion. "She's been asking for you," he said simply. "The doctors say she's stable, but she wants to see you. Would you be able to come to the hospital?" Maria didn't hesitate. She arranged for another waitress to cover her shift and took the subway to Mount Sinai Hospital, carrying a small bouquet of flowers from the corner market and a container of the chicken soup Mrs. Romano had taught her to make. The intensive care unit was intimidating, filled with beeping machines and hushed conversations, but Maria found Vincent sitting beside his mother's bed, holding her hand. Mrs. Romano looked fragile against the white hospital linens, but her eyes brightened when she saw Maria enter the room. "There's my dear girl," she whispered, her voice weak but warm. "I was hoping you'd come." "Of course I came," Maria replied, pulling a chair close to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like an old woman whose body is reminding her of her age," Mrs. Romano said with a slight smile. "But better now that you're here. Vincent has been such a good son, but he worries too much. You bring lightness to heavy moments." Vincent stood to give them privacy, but his mother caught his hand. "Stay, Vincent. I want to talk to both of you." She looked between them with an intensity that suggested this conversation was important to her. "I've been thinking about many things while lying here," she began slowly. "About family, about legacy, about the people who matter in life. Maria, you've become like a granddaughter to me in these past months. You've shown me kindness without expecting anything in return, and you've brought joy to an old woman's heart." Maria felt tears prick her eyes at the emotion in Mrs. Romano's voice. "You've given me so much more than I've given you. You've been like the grandmother I lost, teaching me things I never would have learned otherwise." "That's what I want to discuss," Mrs. Romano continued, glancing at Vincent. "My son and I have been talking about your future, about your dream of opening a restaurant. We want to help you make that dream a reality." Maria's breath caught. "Mrs. Romano, I can't accept—" "Listen first, then decide," Vincent interrupted gently. "My mother has a proposal that we think could benefit everyone involved." Mrs. Romano squeezed Maria's hand. "There's a small building on Mulberry Street that my late husband bought years ago. It's been empty for months, but it would be perfect for a neighborhood restaurant. We want to offer it to you at a very reasonable rent, with the option to purchase after 5 years if the business succeeds." Maria felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the offer. "But I don't have the capital for equipment, supplies, staff. That's where the family comes in," Vincent explained. We believe in investing in people who share our values. We would provide the initial startup funding in exchange for a small partnership stake. You would own and operate the restaurant, make all the decisions, keep most of the profits. We would simply be silent partners who want to see you succeed. But why? Maria asked, still struggling to process their generosity. Why would you take such a risk on me? Mrs. Romano's eyes were bright with conviction. Because in all my years I've learned to recognize character. You have the integrity, the work ethic, and the heart to succeed. More importantly, you understand that a restaurant is about more than food. It's about creating community, treating people with dignity, providing opportunities for others. There's something else, Vincent added. My mother has been teaching you our family recipes, sharing our traditions. She wants those recipes to live on, to be shared with a new generation. Your restaurant could serve authentic Italian food while also celebrating your own heritage. It could be a bridge between communities. Maria looked between them, seeing the sincerity in their faces and understanding the trust they were placing in her. The opportunity was beyond anything she had ever imagined, but it also carried enormous responsibility. I would need to think about this, she said carefully, and I'd want my brother's input. This decision would affect both of our futures. Of course, Mrs. Romano agreed. But don't think too long. Life has taught me that when the right opportunity presents itself, hesitation can mean missing your chance entirely. That evening, Maria sat in her small apartment, trying to explain the Romano family's offer to Marcus during their weekly phone call. Her brother's initial reaction was skepticism mixed with concern. Maria, these people aren't known for their charity, Marcus said bluntly. What do they really want from you? What are you not telling me about this relationship? Maria had expected this reaction and had been struggling with the same questions herself. I think they genuinely care about me, Marcus. I've spent months with them, especially Mrs. Romano. She's become like family to me. Family doesn't make business deals, Marcus pointed out. Are you sure you're not being naive about their motivations? His words stung because they echoed Maria's own fears. Was she being manipulated? Were the Romanos' kindness and generosity genuine? Or was this some elaborate scheme she was too inexperienced to understand? I know how it looks, Maria admitted. But I've seen them when they don't know anyone is watching. I've seen Vincent with his mother, the way he cares for her. I've heard Mrs. Romano's stories about building their first restaurant, about the struggles they faced. They're not the monsters some people make them out to be. Maybe not, Marcus conceded, but they're also not ordinary people running an ordinary business. Getting involved with them could put you in situations you're not prepared for. After they hung up, Maria sat in her tiny kitchen, staring at the container of homemade sauce Mrs. Romano had sent home with her the week before. She thought about the older woman lying in a hospital bed, still thinking about Maria's future despite her own health crisis. She remembered Vincent's words about family being everything, about lifting up your community rather than leaving it behind. The next morning, she returned to the hospital to find Mrs. Romano sitting up in bed, looking much stronger. You've made your decision, the older woman said immediately, reading Maria's expression. I can see it in your eyes. I want to accept your offer, Maria said quietly. But I have conditions. I want everything in writing, with clear terms and expectations. I want to understand exactly what my obligations would be, both to the business and to your family, and I want to pay fair market rates for everything, even if that means taking longer to become profitable. Mrs. Romano smiled with obvious pride, spoken like a true businesswoman. Vincent will be pleased. He said you'd want to do this the right way, no shortcuts or special favors. There's one more thing, Maria added. I want to name the restaurant after my grandmother. Rosa's Kitchen. She deserves to be remembered for the sacrifices she made. Perfect, Mrs. Romano agreed, her eyes shining with emotion. Family should always be honored. Rosa's Kitchen will be a beautiful tribute to her legacy and the beginning of yours. The transformation of the empty building on Mulberry Street into Rosa's Kitchen became a neighborhood event that revealed the true extent of the Romano family's influence and respect in Little Italy. What Maria had expected to be a lonely struggle to renovate and equip her restaurant turned into a community effort that both amazed and humbled her. Vincent had made it clear that Maria was under the Romano family's protection, and word spread quickly through the tight-knit neighborhood. Local contractors offered their services at cost. Suppliers provided materials at wholesale prices. and longtime residents stopped by daily to offer advice, encouragement, and sometimes just to satisfy their curiosity about the young woman who had earned such unprecedented support from the neighborhood's most powerful family. Mrs. Romano, despite her recent hospitalization, insisted on being involved in every major decision. She would arrive each morning in Vincent's car, carrying a thermos of coffee and a notebook filled with ideas. Together, she and Maria planned the restaurant's layout, chose colors that would feel warm and welcoming, and discussed the menu that would blend traditional Italian dishes with soul food favorites that honored Maria's own heritage. A restaurant's soul comes from its kitchen, Mrs. Romano explained as they watched workers install commercial-grade appliances. But its heart comes from the love you put into every meal. Never forget that you're not just feeding people's bodies, you're nourishing their spirits. Maria found herself working 16-hour days, learning every aspect of restaurant management from ordering supplies to managing staff schedules. Vincent arranged for experienced restaurant workers to train her in areas where she lacked knowledge, and Maria discovered she had a natural talent for leadership and organization. The most challenging aspect wasn't the physical work or even the financial planning. It was navigating the complex social dynamics of being associated with the Romano family. Some people treated her with exaggerated respect that felt uncomfortable, while others whispered that she was naive to get involved with such powerful and potentially dangerous allies. One afternoon, while Maria was painting the dining room with the help of two neighborhood teenagers Vincent had recommended, an older Italian man she didn't recognize entered the restaurant. He was well-dressed but carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You must be Maria," he said, looking around the space with calculating eyes. "I'm Frank Castellano. I own several businesses in this neighborhood." Maria wiped paint from her hands and approached him politely. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Castellano. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood," he said, though his tone suggested something more complex than a friendly greeting. "It's good to see new businesses opening, bringing life back to the area. Of course, running a restaurant in Little Italy requires understanding certain arrangements that help ensure everyone's success." Maria felt a chill of recognition. She had heard whispers about neighborhood arrangements, protection fees, supplier kickbacks, the informal taxes that some business owners paid to operate without problems. She had hoped that her association with the Romano family would protect her from such pressures. But apparently, some people were willing to test those boundaries. "I appreciate your welcome," Maria replied carefully. "I'm planning to run an honest business that contributes positively to the community." Castellano smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course. That's admirable. But sometimes honest businesses face unexpected challenges, equipment problems, supply issues, staffing difficulties. Having the right friends can help prevent such troubles. Before Maria could respond, Vincent Romano's voice cut through the tension. "Frank, what brings you to my friend's restaurant?" Maria hadn't heard Vincent enter, but suddenly he was there, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere in the room. Castellano's confident demeanor shifted subtly, and Maria realized she was witnessing a power dynamic she didn't fully understand. "Vincent, good to see you," Castellano said with forced casualness, "just welcoming our new neighbor to the area, letting her know I'm available if she needs any assistance." "That's thoughtful of you," Vincent replied, his tone deceptively mild. "But Maria won't be needing that kind of assistance. She's family to us, which means she's protected by the same arrangements that protect our other interests." The message was clear, and Castellano nodded slowly. "Of course. I didn't realize she was under your family's protection. Please give my regards to your mother. I hope she's recovering well." After Castellano left, Maria felt shaken by the encounter and its implications. "Vincent, I need to understand what just happened." "What did he want, really?" Vincent's expression was serious as he considered how much to explain. "Frank runs a protection racket targeting small businesses. He was testing to see if you were vulnerable to pressure. What you witnessed was me making it clear that you're not. But what does that mean for me? What obligations do I have now?" Maria's voice carried both gratitude and concern. "None," Vincent said firmly. "My family doesn't operate that way. We believe in legitimate business and building community through respect rather than fear. When I said your family, I meant that you're protected by our reputation and connections, not controlled by them." Maria studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or hidden meaning. And if someone decides to test that protection, what happens then? Then they deal with me, Vincent replied simply. But that's my responsibility, not yours. Your job is to focus on building the best restaurant you can build. That evening, as Maria swept paint-covered drop cloths and cleaned brushes, she reflected on the strange path her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been an invisible waitress focused solely on supporting her brother's education. Now she was preparing to open her own restaurant under the protection of one of the neighborhood's most influential families. Mrs. Romano arrived just as Maria was locking up for the night. "I heard about Frank Castellano's visit," she said without preamble. "I want you to know that what happened today was necessary. Word needed to spread that you're not to be bothered." "Mrs. Romano, sometimes I wonder if I'm in over my head," Maria admitted. "I understand restaurants, I understand hard work, but I don't understand the politics of this neighborhood." The older woman took Maria's arm gently. "Dear child, you don't need to understand everything. You just need to focus on what you do best, taking care of people, creating something beautiful, building community. Vincent and I will handle the rest." "But why?" Maria asked, the question that had been haunting her for months. "Why have you done so much for me? I still don't understand what I did to deserve this level of support." Mrs. Romano smiled sadly. "You reminded me of who I used to be and who I hoped my family would always be. You showed kindness to a stranger without expecting anything in return. In our world, that's rarer than you might think." She paused, looking through the restaurant's front window at the bustling street outside. "I'm an old woman, Maria. My time is limited and I want to leave something positive behind. Helping you succeed, watching you build something good in this neighborhood. That's a legacy I can be proud of." As they stood together in the nearly completed restaurant, Maria felt the weight of Mrs. Romano's expectations and the significance of the opportunity she had been given. Rosa's Kitchen would be more than a business. It would be a symbol of what was possible when people chose to lift each other up, rather than tear each other down. The grand opening of Rosa's Kitchen on a crisp February morning exceeded every expectation Maria had dared to harbor. The line of customers stretched around the block, a diverse mix of longtime Little Italy residents, curious food critics, and people from throughout the city who had heard whispers about the remarkable young woman who had earned the Romano family's blessing to open her own restaurant. Maria stood behind the service counter, wearing a crisp white apron embroidered with her grandmother's name, watching in amazement as her small dining room filled with conversation and laughter. Mrs. Romano sat at the corner table that had been permanently reserved for the Romano family. Beaming with pride as she watched, Maria greet customers with the same genuine warmth she had shown that first night at Romano's restaurant. The menu reflected the journey Maria had taken over the past year. Traditional Sicilian dishes taught to her by Mrs. Romano alongside soul food classics, inspired by her grandmother's recipes. The combination shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did, creating flavors that celebrated both heritages while honoring the stories behind each dish. Vincent arrived midway through the lunch rush, accompanied by several men Maria recognized as neighborhood business owners. He moved through the crowded restaurant, speaking quietly with various customers, and Maria realized he was ensuring that everyone understood Rosa's Kitchen enjoyed his family's full support. "The food is exceptional," Vincent told Maria during a brief quiet moment between orders. "But more importantly, look around. You've created something special here, a place where different communities come together, where people feel welcome regardless of their background." Maria followed his gaze across the dining room, noting the elderly Italian couples sharing tables with young African-American families, the business executives in expensive suits sitting next to construction workers still dusty from their morning jobs. The sight filled her with a satisfaction deeper than any profit margin could provide. "Your grandmother would be proud," Mrs. Romano said when Maria stopped by her table to check on her meal. "You've honored her memory while creating something entirely your own." As the weeks passed, Rosa's Kitchen established itself as more than just another neighborhood restaurant. Food critics wrote glowing reviews praising both the innovative menu and the warm atmosphere. Local television stations featured stories about the young entrepreneur who had bridged cultural divides through food. But for Maria, the most meaningful recognition came from her regular customers. The elderly man who came in every Tuesday for lunch because the staff remembered how he liked his coffee. The working mother who knew she could bring her children for dinner. and they would be welcomed with genuine enthusiasm. Marcus visited during his spring break, finally seeing firsthand what his sister had built with the Romano family's support. He spent 3 days working in the kitchen, observing the restaurant's operations, and getting to know Mrs. Romano and Vincent. "I owe you an apology," he told Maria on his last evening in New York. "I was wrong to question their motives. What they've done for you isn't about business or obligation, it's about family." "Real family. What convinced you?" Maria asked, curious about her brother's change of perspective. "Watching Mrs. Romano with you," Marcus replied. "The way she lights up when you walk into a room, the pride in her voice when she talks about your success. And Vincent, he doesn't just protect your business, he protects you. These people genuinely love you, Maria. That's not something you can fake." That summer, Mrs. Romano's health began to decline more noticeably. She still insisted on her weekly visits to Rosa's kitchen, but she moved more slowly and tired more easily. Maria arranged for a comfortable chair in the kitchen, where Mrs. Romano could sit and supervise the preparation of her family recipes, offering guidance and sharing stories with the young cooks Maria had hired. "Teaching you these recipes is one of the most important things I've done in my life," Mrs. Romano told Maria one afternoon as they prepared fresh pasta together. "Food carries culture, carries love from one generation to the next. Promise me you'll never let these traditions die." "I promise," Maria replied, understanding that she was accepting responsibility for preserving something precious. "And I promise I'll teach them to others just like you taught them to me." Vincent pulled Maria aside after one of these visits, his expression serious but not unkind. "My mother is getting weaker. The doctors say she probably has a few months, maybe less. I want you to know that your friendship has given her more joy in this final year than anything else could have." Maria felt tears threaten at the thought of losing the woman who had become so central to her life. "She's given me everything, opportunity, wisdom, love. I don't know how to repay that." "You already have," Vincent assured her. "You've given her the satisfaction of knowing that her recipes, her values, her way of treating people will continue through you. For someone like my mother, that's the greatest gift possible." In September, Mrs. Romano suffered a stroke that left her unable to speak or move independently. Maria visited her in the hospital every day, bringing small containers of soup made from Mrs. Romano's recipes and sitting quietly by her bedside, sharing news from the restaurant and the neighborhood. On a quiet Sunday morning, with Vincent dozing in the chair beside her bed and Maria holding her hand, Mrs. Romano passed away peacefully. Her funeral filled the largest church in Little Italy, attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched over the decades. At the reception afterward, held at Rosa's kitchen, Maria found herself surrounded by people sharing stories of Mrs. Romano's kindness, her strength, her unwavering commitment to family and community. Vincent spoke briefly, thanking everyone for coming and announcing that the Romano family would be establishing a scholarship fund in his mother's name to help young people pursue their dreams. "My mother believed that the best way to honor someone's memory is to continue their work," Vincent said, looking directly at Maria. "Rosa's kitchen will be her legacy, a place where the values she cherished, family, community, and treating all people with dignity, will live on." As the evening wound down and the last guest departed, Maria found herself alone in her restaurant, surrounded by the photographs and memories that decorated the walls. She thought about the shy, reserved waitress she had been just over a year ago, and marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. The next morning, she arrived early to prepare for another busy day. As she unlocked the front door and turned on the lights, she whispered a quiet thank you to both of the grandmothers who had shaped her life. Rosa Williams, who had taught her the value of hard work and family loyalty, and Angela Romano, who had shown her that kindness and courage could open doors she never imagined existed. Rosa's kitchen would continue to serve both communities, bridging differences through shared meals and mutual respect, exactly as both women would have wanted. And Maria Williams, no longer reserved or invisible, would carry their legacies forward with pride, one plate at a time.